You don't want to miss this, because today we're diving into three dark and chilling histories your school probably never taught you. And honestly, it's no surprise they didn't. These stories are far from warm and fuzzy. History, as we're often taught, is polished and sanitized. We hear about wars, great leaders, and technological breakthroughs. But what about the darker stories? The ones that reveal unsettling truths about human nature? These are the stories that didn't make it into the textbooks. And today, we're bringing them to light. Before we proceed, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating videos. And if you enjoy this one, be sure to give it a like. Now, let's get started. Number 3. The Spartacus Rebellion and the mass crucifixion. Let's start in ancient Rome, where one of the bloodiest events in Roman history unfolded, the Spartacus Rebellion. You might have heard the name Spartacus, but what really happened during this revolt will leave you horrified. Spartacus was a gladiator who led a massive uprising of enslaved people against the Roman Empire in 73 BC. For 2 years, his forces fought a desperate and heroic struggle for freedom, defeating Roman armies sent to crush them. But Rome wasn't about to let rebellion go unpunished. After finally defeating Spartacus's army, the Romans sent a terrifying message to anyone who dared to challenge their rule. They captured over 6,000 slaves and crucified them along the Appian Way, one of Rome's most important roads. Picture this, a road stretching for miles, lined with the bodies of crucified rebels, left to die in agony as a public spectacle of Roman power. This act wasn't just brutality, it was psychological warfare, designed to instill fear across the empire. Thousands of lives were sacrificed to ensure that no one would rise up again. The sheer scale of the massacre is staggering, and yet this chilling episode is rarely discussed in depth in schools. Why? Because it doesn't fit the neat narrative of Roman glory, but it's a reminder of the merciless efficiency of power structures throughout history. Number 2. The forced assimilation of indigenous peoples in North America. Moving forward in time, we arrive at North America, where the dark legacy of forced assimilation and cultural genocide has scarred generations of indigenous peoples. You may have heard of the Indian boarding schools or the Trail of Tears, but let's talk about the full extent of what really happened. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, indigenous children were forcibly taken from their families and sent to boarding schools designed to strip away their culture, language, and identity. They were forbidden to speak their native languages, wear traditional clothing, or practice their customs. Many of these children suffered abuse, neglect, and even death at the hands of those who claimed to be educating them. Meanwhile, entire tribes were forcibly relocated from their ancestral lands. The infamous Trail of Tears saw thousands of Cherokee people and other indigenous groups march hundreds of miles under brutal conditions. Disease, starvation, and exhaustion claimed thousands of lives along the way. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part is that this wasn't seen as a tragedy by those in power. It was official policy to erase indigenous cultures. This chapter of history, while receiving more attention in recent years, still isn't fully acknowledged for the atrocity it was ready for the darkest history of all. This one involves human experimentation and crimes so horrific they push the boundaries of human ethics beyond recognition. Number 1. Nazi Germany's human experimentation. Finally, we come to one of the most horrifying chapters in world history, Nazi Germany's human experimentation. While you may have heard of the Holocaust, what many people don't realize is the gruesome medical experiments that were carried out in concentration camps under the guise of science. Led by figures like Dr. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, the Nazis conducted unspeakable experiments on prisoners. These included injecting people with deadly diseases, exposing them to freezing temperatures, and performing surgeries without anesthesia. The victims? Men, women, and children, many of whom were Jewish, Romani, or otherwise deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. One of the most chilling parts of these experiments was how systematic they were. Nazi doctors meticulously documented the suffering they inflicted, claiming it was all in the name of scientific progress. But it wasn't progress, it was sadistic cruelty disguised as research. After World War II, these atrocities led to the Nuremberg trials, where Nazi doctors were held accountable. This dark history forced the world to confront the need for medical ethics, resulting in the creation of the Nuremberg Code, which established critical guidelines for human experimentation. So, what do you think about these chilling stories? Were you familiar with any of them? Share your thoughts or any other dark histories you know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden and unsettling truths. Thanks for watching.